I think it's an amazing story about how when saintly people also have time for architecture, because saintly people, you could say, are doing more important things than building buildings. And yet, somebody like Father Baker also thought it was worth spending time and money on building a beautiful church to God.
The Catholic Church is a church of sacramentality. Okay, it means that we see in created reality and material reality the divine shining through. Beauty always does that. Father Baker was so concerned about making sure he had the most beautiful, the best materials, the best artists. He knew that what they could do with their crafts and with their arts would speak to people for generations.
Oh, Our Lady of Victory is the gem. It's the culmination of decades of building and designing and planning. They were really very, very fortunate in talent of the other workers that did work the inside, the sculptors, the painters, the frescoers, everyone. All the metal work on the outside, the angels, and just amazing. It's quite miraculous. I think they got it done in 5 years.
The design is very complex. It's a fascinating building. If you look at the back versus the front, there's a clear hierarchy, and they're putting their money on the front. I think the overall composition from the exterior, these amazing arms, these curvilinear arms that come out and embrace you, and how there's a crescendo up to the towers and then back to the dome. So it really is an amazing body, you know, like a head and arms and legs. It's all been put together. But clearly the dome is magnificent. It's a very, very unique dome, really.
Father Baker was a really multifaceted person. Every need he could find, whether it was for black Catholics, whether it was for orphans, whether it was for unwed mothers, or whatever it happened to be, he would say, this is the work of the church. The church has to do this. And despite the opposition that he got from governments many times for trying to do that, he said, no way, this is our work, it's our mission, it's what the church is all about. He was also very strong-willed, and you see that in his building of the Basilica here. He was very much hands-on in the selection of the materials in the Basilica, and if he didn't like it, it didn't get built into the Basilica. I mean, he was very much a person who made up his mind, stuck to it, and nothing stood in the way of him getting his will done.
Well, we know that Ulrich is a graduate of the École des Beaux-Arts, which was the top of the Pops School of Architecture in France. And for a time period, it was considered the best school, architecture school in the world, certainly by Americans. All great churches, you give credit to the talented architect and the talented patron. And sometimes the patron may be very tough on the architect. One thinks of Pope Julius II and Michelangelo on the Sistine ceiling. Sometimes that tough client or patron will bring it out of the artist. But there's no question that the great buildings were all done by an architect who was very involved and very talented, but the client was also involved. And that's what you see with Father Baker.
The correspondence between Father Baker and Emil Ulrich is just fascinating. Yet they have their moments where they butt heads and flowery sentences are written back and forth to sort of get their points across. But I feel that they must have had a really ongoing, deepening, developing friendship and relationship.
There was tension and disagreement. And I want to say as an architect, that never happens. Happens all the time. It's normal. And because you've got two smart people, you've got two strong people. And that's just normal. So we give Ulrich, he's the director of the symphony, but the different musicians are actually making a lot of decisions. He's working with Father Baker, who's clearly a strong leader and had his own views about things. I think it's also fair to say that good architecture is ultimately not the product of just one genius, but it's many talented people that come together to create it. The classical impulse, which Ulrich exemplifies, this kind of Roman sensibility. But then what's interesting is the French, like they always do, they learn from Rome, they learn from the Italians, and then they bring their own abilities to it. And often they make it more pure, maybe even more elegant. And so he's looking at Rome through the French lens and creating something spectacular.
People come here, and I think part of that awe is the fact that they not only see beauty, but in it they see God and they find God in their life. So that part of Father Baker's vision has certainly been consistent, and it's held up down through the ages.
It seems to me that whether you're a Catholic or not, this is a great work of art. I like to think of a building, and in this case I would say Father Baker's shrine, Our Lady of Victory, is a great sermon that he wrote. It's a great sermon that lives on after his death and continues to speak to people today.